In the heart of Phnom Penh, where gleaming towers rise from once-forgotten streets, one name dominated every billboard, charity gala, and business forum: Chen Zhi, the young billionaire who promised to turn Cambodia into Southeast Asia's new financial hub. As the head of the powerful Prince Group, he was portrayed as the face of progress, a visionary entrepreneur, a modern philanthropist, and a symbol of China's global ambition. But behind the carefully crafted image lay a darker question that no one dared to ask aloud. Did Chen Zhi really build his empire, or was he merely chosen to hide someone else's? As international investigators traced billions in offshore transfers, shell companies, and real estate acquisitions tied to Beijing's orbit, whispers began to spread that Chen Zhi might not have been the mastermind at all. Some insiders claim he was nothing more than a front, a clean face masking a deeper network of state-backed capital, laundering influence across borders under the guise of private investment. Others argue he played both sides, manipulating his Chinese patrons while exploiting Cambodia's weak oversight to build an empire of his own. The truth, as always, hides in the gray zone between power and denial. And as Chen Zhi's sudden disappearance turned him into a ghost, one question grew impossible to ignore. Was he a kingpin or a pawn in Beijing's billion-dollar shadow game? The story of Chen Zhi's rise begins not in the glare of cameras, but in the quiet corridors of Beijing's financial elite. Before the world knew his name, Chen was an unassuming figure with limited business background. Yet, within just a few years, he would become one of the most powerful men in Cambodia's private sector. His ascent was so rapid, so calculated, that even veteran economists couldn't explain how a little-known Chinese businessman could suddenly control more than 20 subsidiaries across real estate, banking, telecommunications, and luxury development. By 2015, the Prince Holding Group emerged as a dominant force in Cambodia's economy. Under Chen's leadership, skyscrapers, resorts, and financial institutions began rising at an unprecedented pace. Prince Bank, one of his flagship entities, was granted full commercial status in record time, an achievement that normally required years of regulatory scrutiny. The question that lingered quietly among Cambodia's business community was simple: where did the money come from? Leaked internal documents later hinted that initial funding for Prince Group originated not from private investors, but from consortiums in Guangdong, Shenzhen, and Fujian, regions known for state-linked enterprises and politically connected financiers. Many of these early investors were associated with Chinese state-owned enterprises, SOEs, yet their participation in Prince's capital structure was hidden behind layers of intermediary firms and nominee shareholders. It wasn't just about financing growth, it was about planting influence. The rise of Prince Real Estate Group became the cornerstone of Chen's public success story. Lavish advertisements framed him as a symbol of the New Asia dream, and Cambodian media hailed him as a bridge between China's economic vision and Cambodia's modernization. He began receiving national awards, appearing beside top Cambodian officials, and pledging hundreds of millions in charitable donations for education and poverty relief. These acts cemented his image as a benevolent visionary. Yet, behind the stage lights, insiders described a growing dependence on Chinese funding pipelines and loans tied to foreign political agendas. What made Chen's empire even more peculiar was its alignment with China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Many of his real estate projects, particularly those along Sihanoukville's coastline and Phnom Penh's financial zones, overlapped with territories designated for BRI-related infrastructure. On paper, these were commercial ventures. In reality, analysts noticed that Prince Group's activities mirrored the expansion of China's geopolitical influence in Southeast Asia. The group's developments often coincided with the arrival of Chinese state-backed contractors, suggesting a synchronized economic agenda far beyond typical private enterprise. Even Chen's public appearances reflected a carefully scripted dual identity, a Cambodian business leader in title, but a Beijing loyalist in practice. He attended high-level forums hosted by the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, and was frequently quoted using language that echoed China's foreign investment narratives. His empire thrived not by competing with Cambodia's traditional elite, but by absorbing them, merging their interests into a new, foreign-backed economic machine. By 2019, Chen Zhi was no longer just a businessman. He had become a symbol of the new Sino-Cambodian alliance, embodying the seamless blending of private ambition and state-driven investment. Yet, the faster his empire grew, the less transparent it became. Bank filings, corporate ownership records, and profit reports were either unavailable or redacted. Everything was expanding, but nothing could be verified. To the public, it looked like the triumph of a brilliant entrepreneur. To those watching from the shadows, it looked like a front, a convenient vessel through which billions could quietly flow from Beijing into one of Southeast Asia's most permissive economies. To understand the empire Chen Zhi built, one must peel back the polished veneer of luxury towers and charity galas to reveal a vast web of financial engineering that connected Phnom Penh, Hong Kong, and Beijing in one unbroken chain. Behind every glossy development project and corporate press release was a trail of offshore accounts, proxy firms, and politically shielded transactions, a network designed not merely to accumulate wealth, but to move it silently across borders. The structure began with Prince Holding Group as the visible front. Beneath it were dozens of sub-entities, from Prince Bank to Prince Real Estate, Prince Finance, Prince Huanyu Real Estate, and lesser-known shell firms registered in Singapore, Macau, and the British Virgin Islands, BVI. Many of these subsidiaries were paper companies, holding little more than legal ownership documents and acting as conduits for state-linked capital from mainland China. Leaked financial filings showed repetitive investment cycles, where money entered Cambodia from China under the label of development funding, only to exit through Hong Kong or Dubai as returns on investment. In reality, the same funds appeared to circulate in mirror transactions, washing their origins clean. A striking example came from 2020-2022, when Prince Real Estate reported over $2 billion in foreign investment inflows, yet less than a quarter of those funds were ever spent on actual construction. The remainder disappeared into management fees and consultancy payments directed to BVI-registered firms with no employees. Analysts later found that several of these firms shared board members with Chinese state-owned enterprises, SOEs, involved in the Belt and Road Initiative, the very mechanism Beijing uses to project financial influence abroad. This pattern led Western investigators to describe Prince Group as a laundering pipeline for China's shadow capital, and the coordination went beyond banking. Prince Bank maintained relationships with several financial institutions in Hong Kong and Macau, which specialized in what insiders called mirror loans. The model was simple yet effective. A mainland Chinese entity would deposit large sums in Hong Kong. A partner firm like Prince Bank would mirror the deposit in Cambodia as a loan, and the funds could then be re-exported as foreign investment. This technique effectively allowed Chinese capital to bypass strict currency controls while appearing legitimate under international reporting standards. Chen Zhi's proximity to these operations was undeniable. He often appeared at business conferences alongside executives from China Construction Bank, Bank of China, Macau, and other financial institutions that served as intermediaries for state-directed investment projects. His speeches echoed Beijing's messaging almost word for word, emphasizing mutual prosperity, shared destiny, and cross-border financial integration. Those phrases were not just political decor, they were signals of alignment. the political protection sustaining these flows was equally critical. In Cambodia, the Prince Empire flourished thanks to tax exemptions, expedited licenses, and exclusive land concessions. In return, Chen Zhi cultivated close ties with officials across both Cambodian ministries and Chinese diplomatic circles, turning his business success into a form of soft power diplomacy. While local entrepreneurs struggled under bureaucracy, Chen's ventures advanced seamlessly because they were never truly his alone. By the time foreign regulators began noticing irregularities in 2023, the network was already fortified. Even when Prince Bank was questioned about its offshore links, no formal charges emerged. Every inquiry seemed to hit a wall of paperwork, layers of intermediaries, and suddenly dissolved companies. As one Southeast Asian economist noted, "You're not investigating a man, you're investigating a system." That system blurred the lines between private ambition and national strategy. Was Chen Zhi manipulating China's capital for personal gain, or was China using him as its instrument? Either way, he became the perfect face for an empire where money and politics merged into one indistinguishable force. Among investigators and analysts, a theory soon took hold, the front theory, arguing that Chen Zhi was not the architect of a scam empire, but rather a proxy, a face chosen to carry out the ambitions of far more powerful backers. This theory suggests that Chen's true skill wasn't financial genius, but obedience, the ability to appear legitimate, charismatic, and trustworthy while concealing the identity of those really in control. According to this view, Chen Zhi functioned as the interface between two worlds, Beijing's shadow financiers on one side and Cambodia's permissive political environment on the other. To local officials, he was a young visionary pouring billions into the economy. To Beijing's networks, he was a loyal operator who could channel state-directed money into strategic infrastructure under a corporate disguise. Former Prince executives, speaking off record, described a man who never acted without approval from advisors from the mainland, individuals who allegedly had security clearance within Chinese intelligence-linked business divisions. Multiple internal communications from 2019 and 2020 referenced board advisors from Beijing, who were neither officially listed directors nor visible in corporate filings. Their roles involved project oversight, capital coordination, and risk management, language that, to financial investigators, often masks the supervision of state funds disguised as private capital. Chen Zhi's name, therefore, appeared on documents where a politically neutral actor was needed. He was the firewall, protecting higher powers from exposure. The pattern isn't new. China's United Front Work Department, UFWD, responsible for extending Beijing's influence through business and culture, has long relied on private entrepreneurs abroad to represent national interests without drawing diplomatic attention. These proxies act as conduits for investment, intelligence, and influence, and their wealth often serves as camouflage for operations that blur the line between economy and espionage. In Chen's case, several of his ventures overlapped with United Front-affiliated associations, including the Kaohsiung Chamber of Commerce, a network known for its close alignment with the CCE's overseas outreach strategy. Evidence of state proximity doesn't end there. Between 2018 and 2020, Prince Holding Group launched multiple joint ventures in real estate, energy, and tourism, all structured under Belt and Road Initiative (BRI) frameworks. While Chen appeared as the private partner, the financing originated from China Development Bank, China State Construction Engineering Corporation, and other SOEs operating under BRI mandates. Each of these projects doubled as both economic assets and geopolitical instruments, expanding Beijing's footprint across Southeast Asia. What makes Chen's case particularly fascinating is how seamlessly he navigated both realities. To Western investors, he presented himself as a global entrepreneur, fluent in international finance and modern branding. To Chinese officials, he projected loyalty and discretion, adopting the role of an overseas custodian for sensitive capital. He built temples and schools for local communities while attending CC-hosted trade summits abroad. He wore two faces, and both were true. However, being a front comes with a price. Once the structure he represented began to draw global attention, particularly after reports surfaced linking Prince Group to cross-border online scam syndicates and financial irregularities involving crypto exchanges, Chen's usefulness shifted from asset to liability. As pressure mounted from US financial watchdogs, Interpol channels, and regional governments, the system that had once elevated him began to retreat. Public appearances stopped. His image disappeared from corporate websites. The man who once symbolized wealth and legitimacy became a ghost, a silent reminder that in the world of political capital, faces are expendable. If the front theory holds true, then Chen Zhi was never the real power, only its reflection. His rise, his empire, and even his disappearance could all be part of a larger choreography designed not to build an empire of scams, but to protect the empire of influence that created him. To grasp the scale of Chen Zhi's influence, one must look past Cambodia's borders and trace the threads that stretch deep into Beijing's shadow capital network, a financial ecosystem designed to project China's economic power through private investment fronts. Analysts call it state capitalism in disguise, where official money moves through unofficial channels, cloaked in the language of free enterprise. And Prince Group, with Chen Zhi at its helm, fit that model almost perfectly. Across Southeast Asia, Beijing has long used proxy corporations to embed state-directed money into local markets without triggering political backlash. These corporations present themselves as independent entities, but they rely heavily on loans, grants, or strategic partnerships from Chinese state-owned banks and ministries. In Cambodia, the model reached perfection. With Prince Holding Group, the illusion of independence was complete. Because it wasn't the Chinese government investing in Cambodia, it was a foreign billionaire. Documents obtained by financial watchdogs revealed that between 2017 and 2022, multiple Prince subsidiaries received funding from China Development Bank, Export-Import Bank of China, and China Communications Construction Company, CCCC, all key arms of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Yet, these investments were routed through offshore intermediaries in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Macau, masking their true source. The result was a seamless flow of state capital disguised as private enterprise. This network wasn't just about building infrastructure, it was about strategic placement. Many of Prince Group's developments coincided with Chinese-operated ports, data centers, and telecom hubs in the region. Real estate became camouflage for influence. The glittering skyscrapers in Phnom Penh and luxury condos in Sihanoukville were not simply commercial ventures. They were nodes of soft power, providing housing and logistics for Chinese nationals working on state projects abroad. In effect, Prince Group became Beijing's economic foothold in Cambodia, wrapped in the persona of a charismatic young tycoon. Even Chen Zhi's philanthropic ventures served political ends. The Prince Foundation, presented as a charity supporting local education and healthcare, received direct coordination from Chinese diplomatic channels. Charity projects were often used to expand community dependence on Chinese funding, while the foundation itself operated as a soft diplomacy tool, a bridge between China's embassies and Cambodian elites. Meanwhile, Western financial institutions began noticing patterns connecting Prince Group's asset movements to those of other state proxy conglomerates in Myanmar, Laos, and Sri Lanka, regions where Beijing sought leverage through debt and infrastructure dependency. Each time a regional scandal or political crisis erupted, one element remained constant. Money kept flowing through the same network of offshore shells, many of which overlapped with companies linked to Chen. By the early 2020s, several intelligence reports warned that Prince Group might not be acting autonomously at all. Instead, it functioned as a regional clearinghouse for Chinese shadow capital, helping shift funds between sanctioned entities and clean jurisdictions. In this interpretation, Chen Zhi's empire wasn't a personal fiefdom. It was an instrument, part of a much larger mechanism for moving state-backed money in ways official channels could not. But when that system began attracting unwanted attention from US sanctions, EU regulatory scrutiny, and regional anti-scam operations, Chen Zhi's role became dangerous. A front can't stay visible once the mask starts cracking, and as the walls closed in, the man who once represented power and prosperity suddenly became a liability, a living reminder of a network Beijing could never publicly acknowledge. By the time Chen Zhi vanished in mid-2023, the empire he built was already collapsing under its own contradictions. From the outside, Prince Group still maintained the illusion of strength. Shiny press releases, charity events, and construction sites filled with banners of progress. But inside, the machinery had begun to stall. Auditors were resigning, key executives were quietly dismissed, and bank accounts across Hong Kong and Singapore froze without explanation. It was as if an invisible switch had been flipped, one that silenced every voice connected to him. At first, the world assumed Chen had fled because of international investigations into money laundering and cross-border fraud. Yet, as weeks turned into months, a more unsettling theory emerged. He didn't disappear to escape justice. He was removed to protect it. Several intelligence reports indicated that once Western agencies began probing deeper into the financial flows, linking Prince Group to Chinese state-controlled banks, certain Cambodian and Chinese intermediaries abruptly withdrew their cooperation. Simultaneously, Chen's digital identity was erased. Corporate websites deleted his profile, archives of public events vanished, and even his personal photos were scrubbed from social media. The sudden silence from both Beijing and Phnom Penh spoke volumes. Normally, the disappearance of a billionaire of Chen's stature would prompt denials or damage control. Instead, there was nothing. No confirmation, no denial, no obituary. The absence itself became a message. The system was closing ranks. Some insiders believe Chen's exit was an orchestrated disappearance, planned by those who had once empowered him. When a proxy's existence threatens to expose the principal, the safest solution is erasure. His knowledge of the offshore architecture, the accounts, the transfers, the internal codes used to disguise state money made him too valuable to imprison, but too dangerous to keep visible. In this view, his disappearance was not punishment, but containment, a quiet removal from the global stage to preserve plausible deniability for everyone involved. Others see a different narrative, that Chen was sacrificed as a symbolic firewall between Beijing's financial apparatus and growing Western pressure. By allowing a rogue billionaire narrative to dominate headlines, the state could distance itself from scrutiny while continuing the same capital operations under new fronts. If so, Chen's fall served a purpose: to absorb blame and divert attention from the machinery still running behind him. Either way, the result was the same: silence. No court case, no extradition, no accountability. The networks he managed continued to operate, only with different names, different companies, and different faces. The empire didn't die, it mutated. Chen Zhi's disappearance thus symbolizes more than one man's downfall. It reveals how power protects itself through ambiguity, how billions can vanish without consequence when borders, laws, and alliances are blurred. In this story, there is no clear villain or victim, only participants in a system that thrives on opacity. And perhaps that's why Chen's name has become taboo among the very people who once praised him. In the end, the question is no longer what happened to Chen Zhi, but what his disappearance was meant to conceal. Because behind the polished image of one missing billionaire lies something far larger, a global structure where money speaks louder than law, and silence is the final form of control. In the end, Chen Zhi's story is not just about one man's rise and fall, it's about the system that made him possible. A young billionaire emerged from nowhere, built an empire in one of Asia's smallest nations, moved billions across borders, then vanished without a trace, and the world simply looked away. Whether he was a mastermind or a manufactured figurehead no longer matters, because his disappearance reveals a deeper truth. In global finance, the face is disposable, but the network endures. For years, Chen stood at the crossroads of two worlds, the glitter of private wealth and the machinery of state ambition. He smiled for cameras, spoke of prosperity, and promised a new Cambodia, all while serving interests that reached far beyond Phnom Penh. Then, when the spotlight turned too bright, the man who embodied power became its most dangerous witness. Now, his name lingers like a ghost, unspoken by those who built him, unacknowledged by those who hunted him. The skyscrapers still stand, the foundations still operate, and the money still moves, but the man behind it all has become a myth, a mask that never truly belonged to him. If Chen Zhi was indeed a front, then his silence isn't guilt, it's survival. And in that silence lies the final secret of modern power. Sometimes, the most effective way to control the truth is to disappear with it.